Namibia is set to pilot the 4-day work week starting in April 2024 for a period of 6 months. According to Mr. Jonas Ileka from Pulse HR Network Namibia, who's spearheading the Namibian trial, onboarding is imminent for companies interested in participating in the pilot. Mr. Ileka himself now joins us to tell us more. Good morning, sir, and welcome to Good Morning Namibia.
Good morning, Denver. Thank you for having me.
It is my conviction that the average Namibian was under the impression yesterday that an April Fool's joke is being played on us in February. Was it an April Fool's joke?
Thank you so much, Denver. Denver, you'll allow me to express my condolences to the First Lady, as well as to the family, friends and associates, as well as the Namibian House on the passing of our late president. I think everyone thinking that it's an April Fool's joke speaks to the fact that it's probably too good to be true. We're so used to working 5 days a week. That's a traditional work week.
Or so 6 or 7 days a week.
Especially in retail. You look at the medical practitioners and so forth.
Journalists and those in broadcasting.
I think you guys are often neglected, those in broadcasting. So it's not an April Fool's joke, and I think really to understand what the 4-day work week is, we should touch on what it's not. So it's not a law. It's also not being driven purely from government. It's a private initiative being run by the 4-day week global organization through us as Pulse HR Network, which I founded last year, which really looks at the HR fraternity. And we are looking to transform the world of work and try to see how we can make it more efficient. So it's not an April Fool's joke. It's very, very real. And it's here in Namibia now. And we're one of the few countries worldwide and only the second country in Africa to implement this initiative.
What qualifies us to be ready for such an initiative? Obviously, there are multiple factors to consider. So as we have deeper regard to what had brought it about, maybe just tell us, why it is happening for Namibia at this time.
Sure. I think the question is really why not? For a very, very long time, Namibia has always played second fiddle, and we've always been sort of a follower. And this creates an opportunity for us to really lead this transformation in the world of work. Some people are calling it the new normal, but essentially, as we all know, there's a global reset happening. We are rethinking all systems of life, including the world of work. So Namibia is at a very opportune, junction, and we are taking this opportunity. We've got a very diverse marketplace, labor marketplace, some very, very good labor policies and regulations, and I think that creates an enabling environment. And of course, employers and employees with an open mind. That creates a very enabling environment for us to be one of those countries at the forefront of testing out this unique concept that has been proven to have very, very good benefits for both the employee and employers, and obviously to stimulate the economy as a whole for us as a country.
Let's talk more about that. What is it that we're seeking to accomplish with this pilot?
Sure. I think the key word is really pilot. We're testing the waters to see that if this concept of working for 4 days can really bring the results that it promises. And those results or benefits for the employee as well as for the employer. For the employee, we're really looking at reduced workload, well, not workload, but work time, meaning that there's less stress, at least that's what the results are showing us, less burnout, more work-life balance, and the person generally is more well-rested, meaning that they are productive, and then they produce better quality work. That's on the side of the employee. On the side of the employer, it's been shown to increase revenue. When employees are obviously well-rested, they have an extra day of rest, they've got an extra day to spend with their family and do other activities that they're interested in. It's been shown that this reflects in their work, they're more creative, they finish work faster than the normal employee, especially compared to those that work 7 days, 6 days, and even 5 days. So increased revenue, increased productivity, those are some of the biggest benefits that we can expect, at least that we're expecting from this pilot.
The workload will remain the same?
Yes.
Because the idea from my understanding is that you're going about it more efficiently with the load on your desk.
100% Denver, and I think that's the concept that is a bit difficult to understand. The model that we're using is called the 80-100-100 model. It's trademarked by 4-day week global, which basically means that you do the work in 80% of the time. you still produced 100% of the output, and you receive 100% of your salary. And I think this is actually what really sparked the conversation, because since the announcement, the Namibian nation has been really, this topic has captured the imagination and the attention of the Namibian nation, because I think we can't fathom the fact that we'll be working less, still receiving 100% of the salary.
What are the potential drawbacks of a 4-day work week?
That's a very, very good question. So we're not just focusing, especially since the announcement, we're not just focusing on the positive response that we're getting. We're also really observing what people are saying to say, are we really ready? And I think that's the biggest question in terms of mindset, in terms of culture. Perhaps people are also looking at possibilities of this being interpreted wrongly and applied wrongly. For example, someone working 4 days and then their salary is being reduced. That's a potential challenge. But I think the biggest one is really having an open mind to test it. And again, the emphasis is to say, this is just a pilot for now. We're testing the waters to see what works, what doesn't. Some people are saying we're not ready. All of this is based on our own opinions and our own observations, but we're actually trying to implement a scientific trial and test to try and see, if we are not ready, what is it that still needs to be done? If we are ready, what makes us ready? And for Namibia, with its own unique set of diverse factors, how do we make it work for ourselves? I think those are some of the challenges that we're expecting to really find out from this trial.
I don't think it's too difficult to draw a correlation between a well-rested team member and enhanced productivity. However, you as an employer have no control over what it is that the employee does during their downtime. Whether they go out partying and don't sleep at all, whether they gallivant, that might be something that they also derive energy from and have their well-being enhanced. That might be one of the tricky matters. But as it stands, even if you do work a 5-day work week, the employer still doesn't have control over whether or not the employee rests or engages in activities that actually enhances their well-being during those 2 days.
Yeah. And I think the answer is really in the question. It's their own free time. And I think it's that sort of mindset shift, even from an employer's perspective, that needs to happen to say, this is the time for the employer, for the employee to decide what they want to do. From the research findings, what we are seeing, especially with the research done in Portugal and Germany, those two specifically, but also the one in South Africa, we're also observing what is it, or at least trying to find out what is it that employees choose to do with that additional day. So surprisingly, they're not using it to do more work, which is a good thing, whether it's their own private work or their work for the employer. What they're using it is to rest, spend time with their family, exercise, and actually even do environmentally friendly and community type of work. So yes, there's no telling what people will do that extra day. Some of the concerns was also to say, does that mean that it's now 3-day weekend and people are going to be partying and so forth? I think it's their own free time. They choose to do what they want to do with it. From us as 4-Day Week Global, we support both the employee and the employer to try and guide them in terms of how do you make use of this additional free time that you have positively.
And as it stands, people are partying on work days as well. So it's not something that one has control over.
Yeah.
How challenging do you foresee it being, the fact that it's not endorsed by government at this stage?
Sure.
It would mean, firstly, that public sector employees may not be participants, number one, but also those employees in sectors such as broadcasting, such as retail, such as entertainment, who have difficult work schedules where it might not be practically possible to have an additional day off.
Sure. Yeah, so it's government is a very important stakeholder. As we know, our labor market is guided by the Labor Act. So that is the governing piece of legislation. So this is not a law, as I mentioned. So obviously we will be engaging with government. We'll be engaging with government agencies as well to get their input, consult them. But at the moment, it's really a private initiative, as mentioned. We are approaching private employers, but the public sector should not be ignored. In fact, I think there's a lot of potential for us to trial this 4-day work. We can try and see how it can transform the public sector. We all know there are all these preconceived notions and perhaps bad experiences with some public sectors. And so a 4-day work week would really be a good platform to try and see if we work less, still expected to put out 100% output, can that perhaps encourage people, increase productivity, and all of these other benefits that we've seen from the other pilots that have been done before. So I think there's a huge opportunity, especially for the public sector, and also those industries that might look, at face value, they might look like it's impossible to work less time.
But how do you go about it creatively and innovatively? And hearing you say that the output remains 100%, that doesn't mean that a public office, for argument's sake, that offers an essential service will not operate at the days that it ordinarily does. It might mean that you will have to introduce shifts.
Yes.
Is my understanding of that correct?
That's a correct understanding. I think one of the understandings that the public had, or perhaps misconception, was that we're all getting a Friday off, which is incorrect. So the secret really is in flexibility. So we're offering that to employers, whether it's public sector, private sector. We're offering them flexibility to look at their work setup and decide what works best for us. Is it to have everyone off on a Monday, which probably is impractical, or to have everyone off on a specific day is probably impractical. So as you mentioned, there might be shifts to say, if Denver and Jonas work Monday to Friday, then Jonas can have the Tuesday off, Denver can have the Thursday or Friday off. So it's that sort of flexibility to look at your entire setup in terms of work arrangements and try and see what works best for you.
Deliverables remain the same, remuneration remains the same. How could it impact one's leave days?
Sure. Very, very good question. So as we know, leave is given according to the number of days you work in a week. So according to the Labor Act and to general HR practice, the leave days will then increase. But remember, you've got now an extra day off. So you don't really feel the impact of that leave day being off. But employers can also choose to just keep the benefits as is. So this will probably, for those employers after the pilot that opt to take it permanently, this will probably mean renegotiating the employment contract, leaving the salary as is, and I'd like to emphasize this because this is key to the model that we're trying to implement, leaving the salary as it is, but perhaps reducing then the leave days that is entitled to their employee. But the key is that you won't even feel this as an employee because you'd have an extra day off.
In any case,
yes.
per week.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one of the arguments, very interesting, Denver, or concerns rather, is to say we've got so many public holidays already in Namibia, so having an extra day off, will that not create laziness and so forth? And I keep on telling people, say, these are all valid, and I think through this pilot we'll be able to confirm or actually refute it. Thank you. Refute this.
We made mention of a term in our introduction, namely that onboarding is imminent. What does onboarding mean in that context?
Wonderful. So onboarding essentially means signing up of employers that would like to participate. As I said, this is not compulsory for all employers in Namibia, but it's open to all employers in Namibia, from civil society to the public sector to private organizations. So signing them up, giving them training. It's a very big part of what 4-Day Week Global offers to employers to make sure that they are actually ready. So this training runs from everything from how to manage your employees, how to negotiate and discuss how this pilot is going to work, but also things such as automation, using technology better, and rearranging the work, such as maybe having shorter meetings or fewer meetings and so forth. So giving them that training. And finally, setting up the surveys and all these data points, because key to all of this is collecting data in terms of employee satisfaction, in terms of productivity, in terms of revenue over the 6-month period.
You're telling us the pilot kicks off in April, so you're going to wait until the 1st of April to tell us that it's an April Fool's joke?
Not at all, not at all. But again, for me, people think that it's an April Fool's joke, I think is very positive, because that just means that it sounds too good to be true. And I think Namibia is really at the forefront, pioneering some of this work. It's not something that we're just bringing and saying we're implementing it, or we're not saying from 1st of April all the employees are going to work only 4 days, because I don't think we're ready for that. We're really testing the waters. It's not an April Fool's joke. And I think as time goes, as we are really sharing more information and consulting important stakeholders such as government, unions, employer organizations, and even employers themselves, people realize that this is an actual thing. Employers have actually already even reached out to us to try and sign up.
Mr. Ileka Tapandula Unene, good luck with the trial. Good luck with the accusations of an April Fool's joke. It sounds exciting.
Thank you so much, Denver. And I hope that you'll get an opportunity to be part of this trial as well, to see how it works for the broadcasting
I'm sure
industry.
my bosses are tuned in at the moment.
Thank you.
There you have it, the founder of Pulse HR Network Namibia, Mr. Jonas Ileka, talking to us about the possibility of introducing a 4-day work week to Namibia. As it is, a pilot in that regard will be introduced in April. No, it's not an April Fool's joke.